Joining me now in the studio to discuss the ongoing wave of terror hitting the UK is Deputy Speaker of the Knesset and Zionist Union Party, Knesset member Hilik Bar. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Natasha.
So let's talk a little bit about the response that we saw from Israeli leaders here on the ground to what took place in London last night. Gilad Erdan very much compared what took place to what happens here in Israel on an almost monthly basis or daily basis. And now those living in the UK are going to be able to understand how Israelis feel. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, I agree in the way that terror is terror. And we always, in our party, even if we're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we always split our enemies to two kinds. Those who want to live here next to us and those who want to live here instead of us. And I think that those barbaric terror organizations like Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, ISIS, Daesh, of course, belong to those who want to live here instead of us. But when I say us, is not only instead of Israel, it's instead of the UK, Argentina, the US, and everyone that don't want to live exactly the same way these barbaric people want to live. And this is why I agree with Minister Erdan that we should have some kind of global alliance that include the Western world, but of course also Arab states that understand that these evil forces, we have to fight them in the most cruel way and not make any concessions in our war against them.
Now, as a leader in Israel, what advice do you give to the British government right now? What type of response should they be having to what took place?
Well, first, to be strong, because these kind of occasions can break your spirit as a nation. I know the British people. I'm very honored to lead the friendship group between the Israeli Knesset and the UK Parliament. I think that the British people are strong people and proud people, and they should understand that this is a long way to go, because these terrorists are trying to break our spirit as British, as Israelis, as West world is different from them, and we should not allow it. We should understand, they should understand.
How does that look? What does it look to not allow this to happen? What steps need to be taken?
To continue and use any measure against them, to have cooperation on intelligence between Israel. We are doing it already, between Israel and the UK and the UN and the US and all the other bodies and organizations that will help to prevent this, because the main war is to prevent these kind of terrorists from making what they want to make. And by the way, Israel prevents it daily. So if we wouldn't do nothing daily, we would have terror attacks in Israel. I'm sitting in the Security and Defense Committee in the Knesset, and I know how much Israel is preventing it by having very good intelligence.
Right, so let's talk about that. I mean, what kind of impact is this rising terror in Europe going to have on European-Israeli relations in the future?
I think that Israel-European relations are good. It's not good enough, because I think that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict are putting a lot of stress between us and Europe that maybe thinks differently from some of the Israelis. I'm a very big supporter of the two-state solution like some of the Europeans, but I do think that Europe is judging Israel not in a fair way many of the times. And I don't wish for the Europeans to understand us because they will have more and more terror. I hope they will be free of terror, but definitely the Europeans and other nations around the world, if they will face terror, they will understand what Israel is understanding from the day of its creation. And this is that there is elements that want to live here instead of us, that want to hurt us, that want to force on us a way of life that we will never accept. And I think that the Europeans are starting to understand it. Again, you don't have to change their mind about the two-state solution or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but it should give them a better way to judge Israel and a better tools to judge Israel by facing a daily terror.
Now, what about the Jewish diaspora on the ground, Jews that are living not only in the UK, but all over Europe? I mean, are we going to think is there going to be any effect in the treatment of the Jewish population in these countries?
I hope that for the better, because today we are witnessing a wave of anti-Semitic actions and anti-Semitism that is rising and raised its head again against Jewish communities. We saw the attacks that was in Paris and in Brussels against Jewish in synagogues, in museums. And I think and want to believe that the Europeans are taking the necessary measures to protect the Jewish communities and to understand them, and of course to fight anti-Semitism and racism all over Europe. And definitely a continent like Europe should know the lesson of how to treat Jews. And I think that most of the governments in Europe are doing so, and I truly hope that it will continue to be the case.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming in, Knesset member Hilik Bar.
Thank you, Natasha, and I wish all of us a world free of terror and united forces against these evil forces.
Absolutely.
Thank you.